we're going to continue with our foray into Java's graphical user interfaces. And there are three things that I'm going to show you. First is how to show multiple shapes. We, in our application, we had just one. And then just to illustrate one of the things that can be done, I'll generate some random shapes. And then what that exposes are some synchronization issues that come up when you're doing multiple threads. And hopefully it will illustrate why we worry about making sure that the window, the J-frame, and all of its components are on the graphics thread, or what Java calls the event queue, and why, if we're doing something a little bit more lengthy, like generating these random shapes, that it be done in a separate thread. Okay, let's, all right, where we were yesterday was, we had our panel, and we got to choose between a rectangle and an ellipse. And if we drew a rectangle, it came out as a rectangle. If we drew an ellipse, it came out as an ellipse. We also showed how we can set the color using Java's built-in color chooser, which is a very nice built-in thing that we don't have to program. I mean, imagine having to program this from scratch. So, and however we like to set our colors, we can do that. And then in the process also illustrated how, in listening to these radio buttons, listening to this color button, identify what color it is, and then change the color of the text in that just to reflect what color is being displayed. So now the issue here is that every time we draw a new one, then the old one goes away. So what if we want to keep the old ones? Well, again, that doesn't happen by itself. It happens if we Okay, can you see me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. My internet just crashed all of a sudden. Okay, what we want is we want to be able to keep the ones that we've already drawn. And that doesn't happen just by itself. It happens because we do something about it. And furthermore, if we want to keep the color that we were drawing it in, then we need some way of storing that as well. So to that end, a first step towards that, and eventually for a full-blown program, it would probably be ideal to create a class which contained the shape, the color, the position, there's filling in, there's all sorts of things that we can go into. The purpose of this is to illustrate the use of Java. Again, this is a course about Java, and we're just kind of dipping our toe into what's possible here. Actually, most of the topics that we've been talking about, we have not delved in nearly as deeply as we could. And again, that's why this is a first course. Okay, so the first thing is we need a way of storing the shape and the color. One way we can do that is with a map, as follows. We can have its key be a shape and the value be a color. And you'll see that I chose shape rather than, oops, put this in the wrong place. Okay, I don't want it here. I want this all the way at the top here. And I don't want that shape. I want java.awt shape. Oh, no, sorry, I did have it in the right place. Okay, so what we're going to do is every time we draw one of these things, we're going to store it into this map. So this is touching on when we were talking about collections and maps, we talked about maps. Now here's the thing is that if you remember, we talked about how there were two kinds of maps. One was a hash map, which we mostly use. But in this case, we also want to keep the order of things. In other words, in some sense, we want to keep the latest ones that the latest shape on top of the other. So now the order matters. Again, we have two choices. One is we can find a way to sort them, but really the way that we want to sort them is in the order, basically sort of like an array list. And so, again, okay, here we are in the constructor, and this is typically the best place to instantiate an instance variable, typically. And if you remember, there was a second type of map called a linked hash map. And what a linked hash map does is it keeps the keys in the order that we put them in. So what we're going to do is every time we create one of these things, we're going to put it into our shapes and colors map. And so now for our mouse panel, what the first thing, what that means is that when we draw, here we were just drawing the current shape. But instead of that, or actually in addition to that, we want to draw the other ones. So we can do that with our map. So what we are doing here is looping over all of the shapes that we have created. We simply set the color to its key, not the drawn color, but the shape and color of the color of the shape that we had. In other words, every time we create one of these, we're going to put it in to this map. And we're going to draw that shape here. So whenever we create it, we're going to put the color that we created it in as the value in this shapes and colors map. And with the shape that we've drawn as the key. And so it should be clear now that by iterating, okay, what are we doing? When we paint the component, we are iterating over these shapes and colors and simply painting all of the shapes that are in that key set with the color that's the value of that. And again, this is just a simplistic way of doing it. If there were other characteristics, then we would have to move from this into creating an object, and then we could store that object. Actually, in that case, we could simply store it in a list and then iterate over the list. And then for each object, we would get the shape, we would get the color, we would get things like the fill and location and stuff like that. So, but we're not going to worry about that here because we're just doing a simple one. Okay, now this actually hopefully will not produce any null pointer exceptions because it's still gonna work because when I iterate over an empty set, an empty map, then then nothing happens. Okay, so I can at least put that in, and we're all prepared to do that. So now where can we do this? Well, where do we? Okay, that was the mouse tracker. but it was this mouse draw listener where we were putting it. And what we were doing here is setting the drawn shape every time we dragged it. We were sort of creating a new one here. And now we have this other method called mouse released. In other words, when we release the mouse, that means that we're done drawing this particular shape. And because we have defined the shape that we're drawing as an instance variable along with the color, then we can actually put it right here. In other words, here, when we release the mouse, we can put the drawn shape and the drawn color into the into our set. And then now here we want to, at this point, we are done with this, the shape that we're drawing, and so we want to set it to null. It's a little bit dangerous. And then we want to repaint the mouse panel. Okay, so again, what are we doing here? We're saying up until here, see, whenever we drag the mouse, we're creating new shapes here. That's not the most efficient way to do it, but it's a way to get it done. We could, instead of doing this, we could be resizing one, but again, we just did this for simplicity. So when we release the mouse, that means we're done drawing. We're going to put what we've done so far, the shape and the color, into our map. I'm going to set the drawn shape to null and then repaint. And then I need to worry, of course, is that going to produce a null pointer exception? And it isn't, because if the drawn shape happens to be null, I skip the whole thing. And so what I'm after here is now, with just that little bit of code, we should be in a situation where when we draw something and we keep the color, then as you can see, it all stays put. Okay, so that's how we can sort of keep these things. And furthermore, because we have, again, we're not going to go too much further with this. We're going to go a little bit further just to show some other things. But because this is being stored in an instance variable, and in fact, what is it saying? It's saying it can be final. Well, yeah, sure. Let's make it final. Why not? Because this is being stored in an instance variable that's a map, then if I want to do something like save it, if I if I could find a convenient way of saving this, say develop some kind of XML schema that stores what these shapes and colors are. Again, that's a little bit beyond what we're doing in this course. But then I could save that and then have some code that would read that back in. So with just a little bit more work, I can save things. One of the other things that I would want to do, we're not going to get to that, but let's say if I wanted to move things around or resize them, again, that's something which with just a little bit of code we can absolutely do. So right. So now let's see, what's the next thing? Okay, instead I'm going to just kind of do a crude way of doing, like, what if I just want to clear everything away? Just say, okay, that's sort of nice, but let's clear it. Right. So to that end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a clear button. I'm going to put it up in this panel here, and when I hit that clear button, it's going to just sort of clear everything out here. And if you think about it now, what would it take to clear all of these shapes that I've drawn? It would simply mean to invoke clear. There's actually a clear method in maps, and that's going to, I just empty out the map. And once the map is empty, then there's nothing to draw. Okay, so again, as I've said, since I've added some functionality, and so I'm going to commit it. Why? Because I want to, I don't want to lose anything. So, okay, so I'm going to commit this. We now have multiple shapes. So what I wanted, I'm going to add a button here that's going to clear it. So let's see where that's going to be. I can do it right here. And then, okay, I called this a color choice panel, but that's, okay, so I've added the clear button. Let's just make sure it came up. Okay, there it is. Since that's a, now I have more than one in these here, so let's set the border. And let's stick with etched borders. And let's just take a look and see what that looks like. I'm just kind of drawing a little border around it. There's a way to get these sizes to be identical. I don't want to fuss with that. Okay, so I have these now, but the button doesn't do anything yet. Again, even though this button still does something, and again, we can cancel that. Doesn't do anything. How do we do something with that? With an action listener. And so what do we want it to do? Okay, so implements action listener. And in a way, you can kind of see the motivation behind why a lot of people like these anonymous inner classes or these little short lambda expressions. Is that okay? We're just kind of doing one little thing here. And if I'm just doing one little thing, then writing a whole new class is a little bit of overkill. And in a sense, that's kind of correct. However, if we are going to also have menus where we do these or other actions, then we want to, the advantage of having an extra action listener class is that we can direct all of those actions to an instance, one instance of this, and then we can be guaranteed without any extra work that what we do is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so what is it we want to do? We want to clear this and then just redraw. Why isn't it? Wait, what am I? I want this. Anyway, sorry. Already do the mouse and what the heck is going on? mouse panel is a J panel, and J panel has a, sorry, it's, oh, it's not redraw, it's repaint. Okay, and that's all that, okay, we need to, we add it as an action listener. Again, we'll make sure we have the right one. Okay, so again, there's just a little bit of code here to produce some fairly interesting stuff. So again, we can have different colors, different shapes. Again, so what, still can't see that very well, can we? All right, so when we clear it, boom, it's gone. Out of here. Okay, so again, notice that there's, this is how much code was required to produce that, and it's because of the, again, the object-oriented design really helps here. We could have put this into an anonymous inner class, as you may have seen some do, and as unfortunately the book advocates. However, as I've been kind of haranguing, it's actually a lot better designed to have these named inner classes. So again, I've added some functionality. So I've added the clear button, and it's worked. Okay, so so the final thing is I want to again, just as a little fun test, I want to generate a bunch of random ones and just kind of keep throwing them up. So and I want it to be an action listener because I'm going to start it off with a button. And it also needs to be a runnable because this is going to be, let's see, oops, listener. And here I want the run to be second. Okay, so it's going to be an action listener because it's going to be kicked off by clicking a button, and it's going to be a runnable because once it starts running, I want it to be running in a separate thread altogether. Okay, so to that end, okay, what is it we need for this? Well, first, because I'm going to be using some random stuff, we have our old friend random as an instigate. What is this? This is an instance variable of this inner class. Since we're running as both an action listener and a runnable, we want an executor service.
Arnie, you called the random rondo.
Thank you.
Unless you want that.
That's random. Thank you. Okay, so and then we can make our constructor private if we really want, because nobody else is going to and then again, remember for executor services, we those, import. All we need is a single new single thread pool. Single thread executor. Okay. Okay, so when we have now here's the thing is that we're going to have our button. We're going to toggle our buttons text from start to stop. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a switch on the action command. And if it says start, I'm going to start the executor service off by submitting this. Why? Because this is the runnable. I could have done that as a separate class. And then for stop, there's a method called not shutdown, but what is that method? Oh, okay. I know what I want to do. Yeah. No. So instead of that, rather than that, I'm going to have also another instance variable called running, and I'm going to initialize it to false, even though that's the default. Oops. Because the principle is that I do, in general, I don't want to rely on the default values to do anything. I want to be explicit. So we're going to start off, we're not running, but when I, before I submit this, I'm going to set the running to be true. And then all I have to do is set it to false. Oops. And then I could have done a if the else, but first for things like this, I find switch to be convenient. Okay, so the default is it shouldn't happen, but if it happens to happen, then we're gonna. Yeah. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the running in an infinite loop, or I mean, it's going to be infinite as long as running is true. So you see what's going to happen is that as long as running is true, we're gonna execute this. So what we're going to do is first pick a type. So let's flip a coin and decide whether or not we're going to do an ellipse or a rectangle. So if how do we do that? If we random next double, okay, a pseudo-random number uniformly distributed between 0 and 1. So if that is less than a half, okay, we're going to generate a rectangle. Okay, I'm commenting as a placeholder, else we're going to generate an ellipse. Okay, so we're flipping a coin, and 50-50, we're going to do a rectangle or an ellipse. All right, so let's do the rectangle. So what we do for that is what is it? The draw, we said we can set the drawn shape. Well, actually here, let's just create a new shape. We don't need the drawn shape. So it's going to be a new rectangle, 2D, double. Okay, and so we want to put our coordinates in here. So let's generate our X. Our X and Y are going to be located in the mouse panel. So the X, the location, let's do the next int of the mouse panel, get width. Okay, so we're just going to choose an X location at random in the width. We're going to choose a Y location similarly in the height. Okay, so we've chosen a random location. Now we want to choose a random X and Y. So what I'm going to do I'm going to arbitrarily hard code a little number in here. The width is going to be let's take the mouse panel get the width, and let's just divide it by 3 just for, and let's do the same, the height. The mouse panel, let's get the height over 3. So okay, now I'm doing all this within this, and really what I want to do is I want to do that out here, because I'm going to use those same values whether I'm doing a rectangle or, okay, there I did my rectangle, or I tell you, and also I really should make this out here. Okay, so ellipse 2D double, again with the X, Y, width, and height. That new, I want the new shape. Okay, so all right, so what am I doing here? While we're running, I'm going to generate an X and a Y location at random within the panel. I'm going to generate a width and a height that's going to be on average a third of the panel. And then I'm going to flip a coin, and then if it comes up on one side, I'm going to create a rectangle, and if not, I'm going to create a shape, an ellipse. And I put it out here because now at this point, now that I've created those, I'm going to put the new shape in with the current drawn color that I have. I could have generated a random color, but the way that Java does colors, it's RGB, and so I could generate 3 random values for RGB, but I'm just kind of lazy, and I'll just kind of put it in here, and then repaint the mouse panel. Okay, And now all I need is just a button to get that started. Okay. Random shapes. Okay. And then random shapes. And then instantiate my listener. And redefine, okay. Identify that as a button, shapes, and then the random shapes button. I want to add an action listener, our random shapes. Now there's one more thing that I need to do here, and that is when I do start here, then I need to, and again, I'm going to flip the text to stop. And when I stop, I'm going to take my button and set the text back to start. Okay, so that's going to hopefully flip things back and forth. Let's see how that works. Okay, first of all, have we got to make sure we haven't regressed on anything. So can I still draw various shapes? Can I clear them? I can, no problem. Now let's see what happens when I start. And I get a concurrent modification exception. Okay, so that's the final issue that I wanted to address. Remember, I mentioned something called the Reentrant Lock business. See what's happening here. See, when I'm trying to draw it, I'm both drawing it and I'm adding stuff to it. So this concurrent modification exception is because Java's collections are not thread safe. So what's happening, why did I get this exception? I got this exception because I was both adding to the map here while I was also, see, where was I doing it? I was, where was it? Here, while I was also drawing it here. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that only one thread can access this map at the same time. And here's how I do it. I do it with, there are a couple ways to do it. The most effective way I found is with something called a Reentrant Lock. Okay, so Reentrant Lock is something that they created that allows me to basically it's like a queue. So this lock will only allow one thread to execute a certain bit of code. I have one lock here, and one lock, no matter how many of these I create, so I make it a static and one instance of it. So everywhere that I'm putting stuff in or taking stuff out, I need to first lock it. So I need to find all those places. Let's start right here. there where we put it in. So what I do is I lock this, and then here's what I actually put it in a try block, but without a catch. And all I need is a finally. Okay, so lock has a number of different methods, but the main that we're concerned with is lock and unlock. So when I lock here, this says only one thread is going to be able to put stuff in at a time. Now everywhere else, like over here where I clear it, again, I have to do the same thing. I lock, I wrap this in a try block with a finally at the end. Okay, now how does this work? The idea is that even if something goes, no matter what happens inside the try block, the finally always gets executed regardless. And we've seen that when we were looking at the try catch business. But as you can see, I can do a try and a finally without a catch. And so in other words, see, because if I lock my block and never unlock it, then things will just get totally bollocksed up. And then finally, in the other place, okay, here's another place I put it. I want to lock that. Okay, so in other words, only one thread is going at a time is going to be going to be working with this. And then finally, here, where is it? Okay, so when I'm doing this whole iteration, I need to lock. Why aren't you? No. Okay. I need to wrap this whole thing. Now I only need to wrap the piece that deals, I don't have to wrap the whole thing. And in general, I want my locks to be as, oops, as small as possible. We're still running. All right, so now this should fix that. All right, so let's, woohoo. All right, let's, okay, so now what was happening? It was doing everything with no, where are we here? All right, it was it was doing everything at once. So let's sort of sleep for a little bit. Oh, let's sleep for just a little bit. And let's surround the statement with a try catch. So hopefully this will. Okay, so, and then, now here's the thing. Notice that because I've done this in a separate thread, as soon as I change, here, let's clear that. As soon as I change the color into something else, see, all this threading stuff is what keeps this live. In other words, because these are being generated off the graphics thread, but then only being repainted on the graphics thread, then it allows all these other things to happen. Okay, so I stopped it. Now I can start it again. I can stop, maybe change color, and start. You see all these different things. Just random shapes and sizes. You can see that even, you know, if I expand it, then it kind of keeps going. If I contract it, then it'll just sort of keep generating things in here. If I stop, I can stop and clear. I can still draw stuff. And actually, while this is going, I can draw stuff. Again, what enables that? It's the threading that enables that.